Fitness is actually simpler than people realize, but it takes years of study to understand that.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Deskbound Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, David London, and I'm back at it with my man, Lazaros. It's his second appearance on the show. Last time we talked about how to live a world-class life, and I'm super stoked to have him back because that was recorded maybe a year and a half ago where he done maybe, 400 episodes, but now I think this maybe he's approaching his, maybe his thousandth episode or public speaking appearance, which is pretty cool. Lots to share with us. I'm excited to have you back on, man. How have you been?
So good. Thank you so much. I appreciate that intro. And yeah, it has been a lot has changed in a year and a half. The compound effect of small improvements over time has definitely made everything wonderful in my life proliferate, and it's been nothing short of absolutely challenging. So I'm super excited to dive into it.
And I knew you'd be the perfect guest for this episode because, I have a lot of people in my mobility program and I work with a lot of clients and even just talk to a lot of people. And people have the intention of they want to improve their posture. They don't want to feel stiff and restrict at their desk. And they also really want to prioritize mobility. But they really just have trouble, seeing out, it's the same for fitness, seeing out their goals till the end. Like I'll get people, they'll be really good the first month and then they'll slow down or they'll give up. Instead of really trying to make small steps and make it a lifestyle adjustment, which I figured you'd be the perfect person to talk about, how to really see out your goals, whether it's fitness, mobility, etc., life, making sure that you're not, just giving up or slowing down when life hits you.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. So I think that when it comes to any goal you're trying to achieve in life, whether it's to be more fulfilled, to work on your character, to work on your knowledge, to work on your fitness, to work on your intimate relationship, I think consistency is everything. I started saying this. So there's a book called The Art of Impossible by Stephen Kotler. And there's this one line in this book. And the book is basically him breaking down the neuroscience and biology of how to do what other people believe is impossible. And he says, with consistency, all things are possible. Or no, what was it? It's in this book, it says, almost nothing is impossible given a decade.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so now I've flipped that. I like to invert things. I'm a math guy. And now if you flip that, if you invert that, almost nothing is possible without consistency. Okay. So what I'm going to tell your listeners is what I truly believe. I believe that given consistent improvement compounded over time with small daily habits that are towards your goals, I believe that almost anything is possible given enough time. What I also believe is that if you cannot be consistent, very little is actually possible. And that's the practical side of my nature that I used to say, like, oh, anything you set your mind to is possible. That's not true. If you're not consistent, very little is actually possible. And when it comes to mobility, the best analogy I have for this is anyone can do the splits eventually. I can't do the splits right now. Genuinely, if I tried to do the splits right now, there's no chance I can do that without really, really injuring myself. But if I practice every day for the next 2 years, there's no question I could do it. And everyone kind of knows that intellectually, but how many people actually practice mobility every day for 2 years? And I think that's the real question we're contemplating here today.
Yeah, and another big thing too is a lot of times if you're not consistent, you're not going to push the needle forward with anything. Like a lot of the times you think you are if you do something once or twice a week, or even mobility once a month, or once a week you go to a yoga class, but a lot of the times you're just maintaining where you are or trying not to lose where you were, but you're never really getting over that hurdle. And that's what I tell people, why it's so important to work on your posture and your mobility consistently, because a lot of times if you think you're improving your mobility, what you're actually doing is just maintaining what you had or just trying to get back to the results you had versus actually moving a little bit better each day, slowly increasing your range of motion versus feeling starting to feel the stiffness come back on.
I think it's really important to a lot of times the results don't come until later. It's interesting because your habits are basically, I told Kevin this recently. Kevin's my business partner, my co-host, and I said basically he got a new client. Actually, he got 4 clients in 1 week, which at one point was really challenging. And he's like, I don't understand. Like, how is this possible? This is amazing. I'm getting referrals. Our business is blowing up. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I said, Kev, and he was nervous for this one call because this company had reached out. They want to start a podcast. And he was nervous for this one call. And I said, Kev, you don't have to be nervous. Remember, if Bill Gates buys a yacht today, it has very little to do with what he did today. And what I was trying to get Kevin to understand was, Kev, this call doesn't matter as much as you think. It's what you've done for the last 5 years that has brought this opportunity. So you're not going to screw this up. You got this. So whether it's mobility or whether it's, again, your intimate relationship, whether it's your body, whether it's your fitness, your business, remember, it's what you've been doing. Everything's an aggregation. Everything is an aggregation. So like what I've been doing for the last 5 years is the only reason why I'm able to be here on the show right now, right? I met you at an Evan Carmichael event. You and I hit it off. You and I kept in touch via Instagram. Eventually, I came on your show. I had a free call with you. Then I emailed you after the free call asking if you wanted to be a client, if you wanted to coach with me. And then you had said, no, now's not the time. I said, no worries. And then you had emailed me back like a year later after I had already been on your podcast. And you said, hey, is this offer still available? I said, hell yeah. You and I got to coaching. You've been crushing it ever since. Your consistency on the podcast, your consistency in fitness, you're losing weight, you're rocking your mobility. You're selling courses, you've got clients, all because you've been consistent. And so this relationship has evolved so much because we were consistent in our relationship. So everything is an aggregation. And so it's important for your listeners and your viewers to understand that like one 30-minute workout is not going to do almost anything. One 30-minute workout every day for a decade will change your entire life.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how those things build up because I feel people lack the awareness to really see the bigger picture. And, I'm not perfect with it either, and it's something I'm consistently working on. But a lot of times, too, people don't realize that, you're scraping away at those years of, bad habits and poor posture and, lack of even ever stretching. Like, you have to scrape away an inch away, and it really does take time, and I'll get people who I work with who, in the first 2 3 weeks they feel a lot better, and then you'll get other people who don't see results as fast, and that's okay. It just really depends where your starting point is, and some people just respond, their body and their tissues, sometimes just let loose a bit easier, and sometimes these things can be related to your nervous system and your stress management. So going into it, everyone really has a different starting point. But the biggest thing is to really just, find a way that you can sustainably keep your foot, in the game. And I always start people off my program super easy. And I'm always like, it's not supposed to be hard. And I don't want you doing 30 minutes or an hour of mobility a day. What I really want you to do is to do 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes afternoon, and do that consistently 5 days a week. And then, once you graduate and you master the goals of this phase, then we can move you on and give you more. But even if you can't do that, I'd rather you do one exercise every day for 30 days, as opposed to, one day a week, you do a 30-minute kind of thing. And if we can build that consistently that way, because I find a lot of people just be like, yeah, I want to do mobility or I want to improve my mobility, but they don't have the resources in their schedule or the lifestyle adapted yet with their habits. So what I focus on is like looking at understanding their schedule. If you were to work with me, we would understand your schedule, your job, the demands of that, your sleep, your parental responsibilities, and find ways we can, seamlessly integrate more movement into your lifestyle and be like, yo, after your workout, 30 minutes of mobility, or you can't work anymore, you just got to do mobility. But it's about making it work for the person if we want to make it stick.
100%. You got to customize to the lifestyle. You have to make it a part of your lifestyle. And I couldn't agree more. Mobility is something that I've come up on lately. I try hard to do at least 15 minutes of mobility per day. I miss sometimes too, but I'm averaging at least 4 times a week, which I'm really grateful for. I do foam rolling and then I do long form stretching on an app called Ramwad. I'm sure you've heard of it. But basically, the compounding results of small, consistent daily disciplines, it's It's not easy. You're not going to want to do it. I don't know anyone who's like pumped to do their mobility. I mean, let me say this. There are some people that have the habit of mobility so ingrained that they actually would get upset or they would have discomfort if they didn't do mobility.
Yeah, that's 100%
But
me.
yeah, exactly. And if you didn't do mobility, you would feel off. You would feel uncomfortable. It's like me with weight training. If I don't weight train, I feel off. It's actually easier for me to go weight train than it is to stay home and not weight train. Because when I stay home and don't weight train, I feel off. But it wasn't like that at the beginning. At the beginning, it was nothing short of challenging to try to get to the gym once a day. And so right now, I'm trying to start a new habit. I'm writing my book called Optimizing for Fulfillment. I'm trying to do 3 paragraphs a day. In our head, intellectually, it's like 3 paragraphs a day. That should be so easy. It's really, really challenging for me because it's not a habit yet. It's on my peak performance tracker, but I'm getting goose eggs. So I'm averaging probably 2 times a week. And it's really upsetting to me, but eventually I'll get to the point where it's 3 times a week. And then eventually it'll be 4 times a week. Eventually 5, 6, 7. Eventually I'll get to the point where that is a daily habit where I write every single day. And I know that, but I'm willing to fail forward and I'm willing to try to continue to be consistent. I'm willing to fall down until I'm willing to actually be consistent. And I think that this idea, of this whole, everyone knows this, right? It's like January 1st comes, new year, new me. And 1 week goes by, 2 weeks go by, 3 weeks go by, and it's back to the same old routine. I think that human beings inherently misunderstand that everyone struggles to build new habits. I know some people who go to the gym every day without fail, but who could not write every day without fail. I have one client, her name's Laura. She writes every single day without fail, 3 paragraphs a day. She sends them to me every single day. She just hit 104 days in a row. Unbelievable.
Wow.
Unbelievable. But I know that there's things she's not doing consistently. So I think what it comes down to is if you want mobility and better posture to be a better part of your life, you're going to have to prioritize that. And then once it locks in as a habit, just don't break the chain. And by don't break the chain, what I mean by that is just make sure you're doing it for a small incremental amount of time every single day. And just don't break the chain. Don't miss a day. And I think that that's really the key is if you try to change 10 habits all at the same time, you will absolutely fail versus someone who already has 9 habits and then wants to add mobility as a 10th one.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the question that came up to my mind is how many real habits or things can people have in terms of their priorities day to day? Is it that, I know you mentioned priorities, but is it that, they're having trouble making that new habit a priority? Or it's they have this goal, but they don't really want it bad enough as to, why they would be slacking in a certain area? Like, how are those things kind of related? Because I know people can live busy schedules and busy lives, and I hear like the biggest thing I hear is I want to do mobility, but I got to play with my kids at night, and I'm tired after dinner and stuff like that. So like understanding the balance of being a priority of your being a want is like I think I noticed when people apply to work with me, I'm like, is this first thing I ask is this a priority for you? And depending on the answer, you can kind of tell their level of commitment.
100%. And we do the same thing in my coaching as well. The truth is, to answer your original question, they're all related. And so priority, the best way that I can describe my understanding of this, Kevin said this to me recently. He said, Alan, I see you as the human optimization and business optimization person. And so I really appreciate that because I coach the NLU team. I have 18 clients now. So I'm helping them all optimize their life, optimize their habits, optimize their success, reach their goals. And what I've found is this. My girlfriend came up with this framework. It's called the GPS. And basically the idea, just like a GPS, you have where you are now, you have where you want to go, and then you have the path to get there. And so she came up with this framework that we now use in our relationship talks coaching called the GPS. And it starts out with core aspirations, then it's core values, then it's core beliefs. So core beliefs are about who you used to be. This is usually your conditioning. So we're all born into this world with no beliefs. If you're born in Japan, you have certain types of beliefs, most likely based on the culture. If you're born in, New England, Massachusetts, you have different beliefs. So the beliefs are typically about your past. It's whatever you've come across and learned to believe up to this point in your life. Okay, so beliefs are about the past, and you can change them. Everything you say, think, do, feel, and believe is a choice, and a lot of it is based on beliefs. All behavior is belief driven. So that's number one, core beliefs. Number two is core values. Core values is how you show up in the present. Okay, so for you, you feel off when you don't do mobility because mobility is a core value that is tied to your identity. So your core belief is I, David London, am the mobility guy. Okay, your core value is I stretch daily. Okay, now core aspiration. Core aspiration is not about the present or the past. So core beliefs about the past, core values about the present, core aspirations about the future. Okay, and all of us are an amalgamation of these three, past, present, and future, all at the same time. So if you're out there listening or viewing this, you are a combined amalgamation of who you used to be, who you are now, and who you aspire to be. Who you aspire to be is what I think is the most important. And so I say this simple analogy. Michael Jordan was not in shape because he wanted to be in shape. Michael Jordan was in shape as a byproduct of wanting to win championships. And so what I'm trying to explain with that simple analogy is that if your core aspirations do not include being the most athletic version of yourself or some sort of high aspiring athletic goal, you most likely won't have mobility as a daily habit. Even if you tell yourself, I'm the type of person who does mobility and I want to do mobility every day, and that's a core value. Mobility is a core value. If you don't have a core aspiration that it's tied to, that's meaningful to you, it most likely won't happen every day. And here's the analogy. Let's say there's someone out there who wants to run every day. Okay, there's two versions of this person, two people. Okay, one's Jane and one's Joe. Okay, Jane tells all of her friends and family that she's going to do a marathon in 3 months, and she invites them all to come, and there's an after party with all her friends and family, her close friends and family. Okay, Jane is going to end up running every single day. Okay, Joe just wants to run every day for his good health. Who's more likely to run consistently? See, one of them is going to get massive pain if they don't run because they're leveraging all of the parts of core aspirations. Jane will run because she knows if she doesn't run, there's massive consequences. I might get laughed at. I might not finish the race. I invited all my friends and family. It's called accountability. It's social accountability. And so to answer your original question, that's what it is. Core aspirations, core values, and core beliefs, and alignment with those is actually how you prioritize. And as for the limit of how many habits you can have in a given day, that's a whole nother conversation. But hopefully that answers your original question.
Just Sound Therapy, David London, great resource and great strength and conditioning coach that I've been working with for over about 2 years now. Specifically, these last 3 months during quarantine have been some within our program. I've noticed a big difference in improvement. And the biggest things that we switched up, obviously, during these times, we don't have a gym access or weight room access at the moment. What we did these last couple months was a calisthenics-based program, bodyweight program, and we definitely increased the mobility aspect of training. And just with what we have done, I've noticed a lot more of it being more functional and transitional to whether it be baseball or whether it be just movement overall as a human being, to where I actually am considering being more calisthenic based going forward into our next phases in our program. The thing is also, the things I got out of being calisthenics based is that more body awareness, actually more muscular endurance. Noticed that my mobility actually increased, which was a weakness of mine, especially in my hips. And when it comes to just, I guess, throwing or pitching or, baseball in general, An example would be upper body. So I've transitioned to more like push-ups and pull-ups and dips and muscle-ups, or rows. I use the EQs by Libre Fitness. They're the EQ bars. I believe you've probably seen some in some of my posts. And I'm still able to get pulling movements in, pushing movements in. We've even done like a plyometric power phase with these type of workouts, and I'm not feeling so tight in my upper body, and that's not only due to calisthenics. That's also due to the shoulder mobility routine that he's put me through, my hip mobility routine he's put me through, and some of the videos that I have posted. A lot of people have been giving me feedback that my hip rotation is actually a lot better in my delivery than past months before. My hinge patterns have increased. So just wanted to let you know, I mean, there's more to come in this training phase and going forward. Not saying that I'm against weight training or will never go back to it, but definitely from what I've experienced these last 2 months, calisthenics is definitely made a big impact, and I do recommend in some shape or form that some athletes or fitness enthusiasts or people who train in general incorporate that into their training. So I just want to give a shout out to David at Despot Therapy. Reach out to him if you're looking for a resource or wanting to get into some training. He's definitely somebody I recommend and I've trusted these past 2 years. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really interesting to understand that it's, what you want and what you believe in versus, your values and your aspirations. And there's a lot, a mindset work that goes into, the habit change, into doing mobility, because, it's not something that's inherently easy to do. And a lot of people, if you don't have that, guidance and accountability, you can do it wrong and injure yourself, or you can just keep doing, stuff you see on online that might not be right for your body, and then you're not really getting anywhere, and then falling to the cycle of getting frustrated. So it can be hard, because if you aspire to be somewhere but you're really not sure the right steps to get started or what to do, it can be really hard to solidify those habits and really making those change. And one thing I talk about with my clients is whether it be when we're just starting or on a coaching call, or when someone is falling off, I always ask them, has there been any recent changes in your schedule? Like, is this still something that's important to? Because I want to make sure we're making really making the most out of what we're doing. But it's interesting to understand, like, people might not be aware of how much work it takes to go from aspiration to a core value. And I don't want you guys to misunderstand me. Like, you don't need to mobility isn't something that's going to take over your entire life. It is necessarily like, if everyone would, it was easy to make mobility a habit, a lot of people wouldn't be in a lot of pain and discomfort. But it doesn't mean it's impossible to get more mobile. It just takes, it takes the right guidance and support. And one thing that I have found to be successful in terms of improving my mobility is really learning to understand your body in a process. So it's not just the exercises you'd see on Rod, or I would give you as a coach. It's really your job to work with your coach to understand what it's doing for your body. For example, like, if you do a certain movement in your program but you're not sure what muscles it works, what movements it's training, you're never going to really have the understanding to help really build self-sustainability long term. Because I tell all my clients, I like to educate people. This is what we're doing, this is why you're doing it. And if you're having these issues throughout the day when you're working, for example, let's say your neck hurts, and we do an exercise where we're doing controlled rotation of the neck, and that relieves your issues, then you're empowered long term to really take ownership of your own health. And then long term, it's going to be easier for you to maintain that habit, because you have the newfound knowledge versus just going to yoga class, not fully understanding the poses or the movements or how it actually benefits the body. So I found, like, adding in the educational component really can help solidify things too, because then you could say you're stretching with your kids, you could teach them, or say you're at the gym and someone's asking you a question. Or, for example, yesterday I was mid set and something was bugging me, and I did a quick little drill and it was fine. So super powerful stuff by just adding the education piece.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So what you're tapping into is a deeper understanding. And the power of that cannot be overstated, in my opinion. I for example, I don't know anything about cars. So if I go and buy a car, I'm going to probably bring someone with me who knows a lot about cars so that I know that I'm not being taken advantage of. Um, someone might pay me, a good amount of money to coach them, but they should not pay me to fix their car. Why? Because I don't understand how cars work or why cars work. I do understand how humans work and why humans work. And so I think that when it comes to mobility or any facet of life, having that deeper understanding, that educational piece is the only way to truly become the master of your own sort of results in your own life. Because if you're relying constantly always on other people and you're not educating yourself consistently, you're not going to be able to customize and tweak. So for example, in our coaching, it's like how to optimize your life because I've not just helped you optimize your life, but I've also taught you how to optimize. And I've
Right.
taught you some of the principles underneath the optimization. And I know that you do that with your clients as well regarding mobility.
Yeah, it's interesting too because I've noticed that in terms of habits, like yes, you can have a lot of things you want to do and work on each day, but I find doing things at consistent times has really helped me kind of stay the most consistent because my body kind of sometimes goes in autopilot and goes into routine. I kind of just wake up and I get right down on the mat and start moving, but it took a while to build that habit, but I found if I were to skip it one day, and it would be troublesome for me later on to fit that in versus once they become more solidified at the specific times of the day, you kind of naturally gravitate towards those things. And that's when I tell people, like, look, if you can't do the 10 minutes, let's get you in the habit of setting a timer and doing one kind of thing at your desk, each hour. And that way, it's if you miss one, it's going to be very easy. You can kind of pick back up that way, just kind of like tracking your daily daily habits. It's still going to have that consistency throughout the day. So it just depends how you look at things. Like you could track your consistency day to day or week to week in terms of the habits. But it's interesting though how we able to kind of give labels to these, like the core values, the aspirations, and the deeper understanding. It's cool to have like a general term for that people can start to really think about.
Yeah. I think that we undervalue deep understanding, in my opinion. That's a core value of mine of um, I want to understand. So fitness, for example, I was a fitness model, fitness coach, fitness competitor for a long time. And I guess not that long, probably like 5 years, 4 or 5 years.
I'm peeping the
And
trophy in the background there.
yeah, exactly. Um, that's a good one. So it took me multiple times to get that trophy. I came in fifth the first time and then first the second time, which was cool. And then I got fourth the third time. So, but anyways, so the reason that I mentioned that is fitness is actually simpler than people realize, but it takes years of study to understand that. So I broke down all of fitness into 5 main facets: sleep, hydration, nutrition, training, and mobility. And then each of those facets have sub facets, right? So nutrition has calories, micros, and macronutrients, right? And so the key here is, do you understand why you're doing what you're doing? Do you understand how to build habits? Do you understand why to build habits? Do you understand mobility? Do you understand what exercises you should be doing? Do you understand how to get yourself to actually do them daily? That's all really important questions to contemplate and to consistently contemplate. And again, you and I are not perfect at this by any means. We're just better than we used to be. And I think that's another important thing to say as well. I'm not perfect at my habits right now. I'm just better at my habits than I used to be, and better than like I'm not as good as I'm going to be next year. I'm just going to consistently and sustainably improve. Um, and I think that that's really what matters: is set goals that are aligned for you, core aspirations, improve by 1/10 of 1% every single day in that area towards that aspiration, and then, never quit. And if you compound that over the long term, you're going to far exceed even your own goals, if you can stay consistent.
Yeah, and I liked what we talked about earlier about, you know, people not giving up because it's one of their core aspirations. And I find that interesting too, like in terms of the whole 1% getting better, is that, I find people struggle to understand that it's the small things that build up. When I talk to people, or even just, from what I see online, or even just talking to my friends, people struggle to understand that because it's hard. Like you have a goal, so you want to, lose 20 pounds. It's hard to understand the compound effect, like truly, especially early on in the journey, starting working out. And I think you really have to fall in love with the process and become a person who enjoys mobility, and starting to tell yourself, like, stop telling yourself that you're in pain and stop telling yourself that you're not mobile, because then you're just gonna you're not gonna be in the right mindset to want to do the work. Like, even on days like today, like I'm a bit stiff and a little achy, and don't get me wrong, we're sitting right now for this episode, but I was standing all morning, so it's just about variability. But the thing is, just being able to find a way that you can see the light at the end of the tunnel is so important. And I find, one thing that works personally with the system I use with my clients is you can start to like physically feel better from the mobility, but a lot of times I find people need that visual input. So we constantly record videos and compare them, be like, look how much better you're moving. Like, yeah, you might think you're not seeing progress because it's mobility is something that you feel. So I find, if record yourself today and a month from now, and look where you are, and use that to again develop that deeper level of understanding, and that itself can inspire you to stay consistent long term.
And when you feel better, you'll do better. That's the key is when you sleep well, hydrate well, when you eat well, and you train and exercise daily, and then you do mobility, you're going to feel better. And when you feel better, you're going to do better. Everything else in your life is built off of that foundation. And you know, it's interesting. We talk about health, wealth, and love, and it's in that order on purpose, because without your health, you're not going to be able to create wealth, and without wealth, you're not going to be able to have the freedom to really focus on love in your relationships. And so, um, health is first, though. Physical health, mental health, emotional health, and spiritual health. But one of the components of physical health is mobility. And again, I admire what you do, because more now than ever, we're sitting at desks than we ever have, and it's becoming a real problem. I mean, there's obviously an obesity crisis, and there's a lot of people out there, especially with COVID, that are not moving as much as they used to, and it's causing chronic pain, and chronic pain is creating this need for drugs. And it's a compounding challenge. It's a compounding challenge that each of us has to work on. And at the end of the day, when you feel really good in your body, you're naturally, everything's going to be better. Your relationships are going to be better. You're going to sleep better. You're going to feel better. Your work's going to be higher quality. Everything. I mean, if I didn't feel good in my body right now, like, I wouldn't be able to have the 9 calls that I have today, and I wouldn't be able to be vibrant and on point with them if I wasn't hydrating. It's interesting, because it's like, it's what I've been doing up to this point that allows me to perform right now. Right? If Kobe Bryant, RIP, if he were to hit the game-winning 3-pointer, at the championship, it's not because of what he did right then. It's because of the previous 20 years of hard work of practicing 3-pointers. And so mobility, health, nutrition, all of that, it's the same thing. And I think that's really the theme of this episode is it's the aggregation of your small daily choices that add up to your well-being, and they compound. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I definitely like what you do. I think it's really important, and I think it's really needed in the world right now, more so now than ever, honestly.
Yeah, and I really like the way that you put that in terms of, the Kobe Bryant analogy, and the fact that it's the overall aggregation. And I think, as we continue to educate and inspire people, will start to understand that. But I think something that's a little bit off topic that you brought up is, we are sitting a lot, and something that's always puzzled me, because I have a very different view of things than the average person, is like, it just it's honestly frustrating that I wish, there's an easier change way we could change on a societal level how we view like sitting. Like, there's like workplaces before, or aren't things by default aren't favoring your posture, and the environment, office spaces, condos, whatever, houses, like by default they aren't meant to give us space to move our bodies. Like, we're really confining ourselves in society's way of doing things. For example, like being cubicles without the default option to stand, or like this chair right now, I don't use it very often. Like, if I sit back, I just by default can't have good posture. So I typically sit towards the edge of the chair for a little bit, then I'll rest a bit. But it just, our, I wish society didn't view things in a way that were for our comfort versus for, allowing us to move and be more ergonomic. And recently I partnered with a few awesome companies that are doing great things, such as, Core Chair. There's a chair that actually moves with your body to help prevent lower back pain. And I just partnered with a company called Ergonomics that has a really cool standing desk built in with an app. And every half an hour, it automatically stands up and sits down. And there's a bike that goes under the desk. And I just started using that, and I'm going to be posting some content of that coming up soon. But I like, that there's these small startups and there's these companies doing these things, because I really want there to be a societal change. And, my long-term goal is I want people to be in an office or, and be like, yo, we've been sitting for an hour. Let's go do some desk bound therapy. Because that's the change we really need to see if we want, people to move better on a global scale. But, it's definitely a tough task, but to change on a societal level, but it all starts with that aggregation, the compound effect.
It all starts with the integrity of the individual. Dave, I'm using a posture pad right now.
Nice.
I have a posture pad right on this chair, and anyone who's listening to this show right now, you're also part of that proliferation of helping people become more aware of their posture. And if you've ever seen a video of yourself or a photo of yourself where you're kind of slunched over, you ever seen Christmas is coming up, like the Grinch, his posture in the Grinch. Like, I always joke around and I'll like do the Grinch impressions with my girlfriend. She thinks it's hilarious, but his posture is like terrible, and he's got this big belly, right? And it's like, unfortunately, that's what a lot of people are headed towards if they're not careful. And so, yeah, I couldn't agree more. It is a daunting task, but it starts with the integrity of the individual. And I think that all problems start there. I think that we can all sweep our own porch and the whole world will be clean. And once we sweep our own porch, we can go out and help other people sweep their porch. And I think that that's sort of the analogy, the philosopher that said that, I forget which one it was, but like, let us all work on our own posture, and that will inspire other people to work on their posture, which will inspire other people to work on their posture. And it just proliferates from there.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's starting to, that compound effect will happen. It's just a matter of, a matter of time, because I find there's like, we know that posture can, modify and affect pain and cause discomfort. And there's too many people out there on social media trying to argue the opposite, when in fact it's not really helping towards the long-term goal of educating people to, be aware of their bodies. Like, you'll get people saying your next posture is your best posture, which I don't necessarily agree with, because it gives people a cop out that it's okay to, to have bad posture and do nothing about it. And then you'll get the, the other side where posture does matter. But I just think we need to, people got to stop, in terms of, fitness and health and healthcare, we got to stop, trying to be who's wrong versus right, and just trying to help the same message overall.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's instead of arguing, let's just work on it. Let's just improve.
I got one last question for you today. I think it could be helpful for the desk-bound professionals listening. What is something that you do or recommend to help maintain a work-life balance?
So I break my day into thirds. So morning, afternoon, and evening. And you've done peak performance tracking, so you know that it's broken into thirds: health, wealth, and love, morning, afternoon, evening. Not necessarily, those two aren't necessarily correlated, but the first third of my day is always for me. I pour into me first. The second third, the afternoon of my day, from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. is service. So podcasts, coaching calls, speaking gigs, all of that. And then the third is for fitness and for family and for rest and relaxation. So the first third, I wake up, I do my morning routine, I have my solitude time, I do my important work. 10 a.m. hits, that's my first call. I start my calls. By 7 p.m. at the latest, I'm done. I go downstairs and I immediately start to transition into going to the gym. My girlfriend and I go to the gym together, get home, we eat, we do rest and relaxation, and we spend quality time with our dog, Tucker. And that's really how my days are set up. Again, I think it's important to break your days into thirds: mornings, afternoons, and evenings. For the desk-bound professionals out there who do have 9-to-5 jobs, there's still ways you can say, okay, the morning is going to be for my back office work. The afternoons are going to when I'm going to schedule my meetings, and then the evenings are going to be for fitness and family. So I think that can be really helpful for anyone, even if you're not an entrepreneur and don't have control over your own schedule. Just because you work at a professional job doesn't mean that you can't design your own schedule, hopefully.
Yeah, super awesome advice is, breaking it down and then throughout each of those things, starting to do a bit of movement in the morning and then you can even do in the afternoon, evening, but even just trying to find ways that you can break things apart because then you can really compartmentalize and think and have a good plan of success because, you can have all these good habits and all these core aspirations, but without the plan, and that's when, people tend to fail. So really awesome having you back on the show. Really enjoyed this conversation. There's definitely a lot to digest here. So the listeners, I'd recommend, listening once or twice. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Alan on social media and definitely check out his podcast. I just got my Spotify wrapped and I had, I think 2,000 minutes listened because there's always something to be learning every single day. So thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you. Thank you, David, for what you do. Thank you for being a client. Thank you for everything. And thank you for having me. This was wonderful.
Yeah. How can people find you on social media and the podcast?
So Next Level University, spelt just like it sounds, Next Level University. It's on all podcast platforms. We're also on YouTube. And in the show notes will be all of my contact information. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can DM me on any of those platforms. Between my assistant and I, we get back to everyone. So please reach out. Also, if you are curious to learn more about who we are, what we do, Alan at nextleveluniverse.com is my email. It's not Next Level University, it's nextleveluniverse.com because we are a business that is much more than just a podcast. So our URL is Next Level Universe and our podcast is Next Level University.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having you. And it was, if you enjoyed this episode, definitely let us and Alan know on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review and a comment. And if you're curious about what mobility coaching would look like for you, I would love to hear from you. We can chat about your goals and your lifestyle and your schedule and all these things we mentioned. Try to see if working together would be a good fit. So, I have no hesitation to reach out. There's no commitment. Just send me a message at Deskbound Therapy on Instagram or David at deskboundtherapy.com. Would love to see how we're able to work together. Thanks so much for listening and stay tuned for the next episode.